welcome to Brains and Bubbles Live. I'm your host, Davina Dandridge, and I am here to share the benefits of emotional intelligence with women who are looking to take hold of their emotions so they can take hold of their lives. And taking hold of your life means handling situations right now, resolving situations from the past, and working towards a goal for the future. And it's not just women who need to do this. Everyone needs to start, regardless of age, regardless of sex. But I am focusing on women because, as a woman who has lived life, and I mean, I've gone through ups and downs, I've had disappointments, successes, victories, happiness, days of sadness. But the thing to think about and the thing to work toward is the ability to harness your emotions so that you can control how you start thinking, and so that your thinking can be better for your behavior. And good behavior, it sets up the desired environment. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So this episode is very special to me because we're going to be talking about my dad, David Stokes. And you know what? My dad is a fantastic guy. His legacy still lives on within myself and my sister and my daughter and people that we know, family, friends, people that we've worked with, that he's worked with. So I want to take this time to shed light on how my sister and I were blessed to have a father in our lives and some of the lessons that he taught us. Now, I am doing this in an effort to share with my sisters because I know that not every woman has had their dad in their life or a significant father figure that imparted wisdom that helped them to develop in areas where they couldn't see for themselves, where as women, we can't shed light on these areas because we don't have the same perspective as men. And but not only was my dad a great dad, he was a great human being, a great thinker. So I couldn't bring any guest on this show to talk about the love and the emotional support that we got from our dad, but my sister, a dynamic woman in her own right, the only other person on this earth that has shared as many life experiences together with me. I'm going to bring her on right now. Her name is Evelyn Stokes, and here she is. Come on, E. Hey, hey.
Hi.
Hey,
Oh,
hey.
you know what? I have my background all weird. Let's see. How can I change this? Because you can see my background. How
Wow.
are you?
I'm well. How are you? This is our first time together on camera.
I know. Hey, sis, I want you guys to see my plants in the background. Wait, I do this all the time. How do I change the
I
background?
think it's
I
called blur. It
I
might
know.
be
I'm
in
trying
your
to go.
Zoom setting.
Okay, so show.
Well, listen, you go ahead and fix that. I want to jump right in while you're doing that.
Okay, I'll fix it. Okay.
Okay, I was sharing with the people that David Stokes, who was our dad, was a fantastic dad. And listen, this is not bragging, this is helping
Right.
because there were so many lessons that he taught us just in our day to day interactions, just the level of wisdom all the way through the years. So while you're fixing that, Evelyn, I'm going to read an excerpt from my book, Brains
Okay.
and Baubles Do What Works for You, where I talk about my dad and the relationship that we have with my dad. So let me put my glasses on. Oh, ooh, watch it. All right. So here we are.
All
In
right.
my
I got it.
family, okay, come on in
Okay.
while I'm reading.
Okay.
In my family, we call my dad the nonconformist. His ideas often went against the grain, whether they were related to politics, racism, or economics. He never succumbed to the status quo. My dad was a consummate reader. Okay. He was a consummate reader of the daily newspaper, the Bible, and any math or technical textbooks. He exhibited excellent critical thinking skills, and he did not miss an opportunity to share his ideas with my sister and me. So I think that that's just an introduction to David Stokes. What do you
It
think?
is. He's a man who was extremely intelligent, had many thoughts and opinions. He had a depth of emotion like I've never seen before. He was really in touch with who he was and how he felt at the time. And I appreciate that. I think I get some of that rawness from him because it was just what you see is what you get. And, we found that people were just always intrigued to talk to him and wanted to sit and
Mhm.
listen to what he had to say.
He was a great storyteller. And, we know that stories and folk tales that are get passed down from generation to generation, they have lasting significance in families and in cultures. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing that I still pull on today were a lot of those stories where he talked about growing up during the Depression. He talked about stories about walking home and having to walk across a graveyard, and just the things that he and his brothers and sisters would do in their house. Those
Mm-hmm.
things that we can only read about now because it's like a time going by that right now it seems unrelatable. Just the
Yeah,
idea that he forged documents so that he could leave North Carolina to go into the military. Those
right.
types of acts are just ones that just have so much character and
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. And I think that he shared that.
Yeah, yeah. You can't judge. I mean, people of the past. I go to ancestry. I've been looking at all of our family history, and I never judge what they did because people I can see in the documents that people did what they had to do. They had to make certain decisions. So he had to get out of the South. So he said he was 18 when he was 17, and if he hadn't done that, we may not be talking right now.
Yeah, and the thing that was so fantastic about our dad is that he was the same with everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me rephrase that. He was very specific about the people that he wanted in our lives and that he involved with. So when I say everyone, with us having businesses for a number of years, and the community knowing about our businesses and such, we were engaging with a lot of people in the neighborhood and vendors
Mm-hmm.
and such. But there was a certain element of people, which we all know about, especially growing up in the inner city, that
Mm-hmm.
he didn't have time for.
No,
And he
had no
would,
tolerance.
no tolerance, and he would make sure that we were street smart, that we
Yeah.
knew. And he had come up through, like I said, the Depression. He came to Detroit at a high time. He did great things in his life. He ran for mayor of the city of Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
He was a real estate broker, and he knew people, and he owned other businesses as well. So he had a certain knowledge based on his experiences that we got benefit of. And I
Right.
think it just really helped to keep us centered in a lot of ways. What's your earliest memory of a lesson that he taught you?
Earliest memory of a lesson?
Yeah, just one thing that you still carry with you today that just kind of says, thank you, Dad.
Well, we talked about this the other day. Driving was a big thing.
Yeah.
This was
Yes.
like I cannot parallel park without thinking about him.
Yeah.
I was on a very tight street on Cass downtown, and I was in a very tight part of Cass where there's parking on both sides of the street. It's one lane, and I found parking where at my destination it was right in front, but I had to parallel park, and there was this huge truck behind me, like a
Uh-huh.
big truck, and I had one shot to parallel park, and it was like my parallel skills were like smooth,
Like,
boom, right,
woo, like David
and
Stokes was gliding the wheel, huh?
right, and it was so smooth. The guy in the truck was like, "Good job."
All right. All right. I
I was
mean,
like,
driving.
thanks, Dave. Thanks,
Thanks,
Dave,
Dave.
man.
Like, I think I have an internal compass because of him. I rarely
Yeah.
get lost, and I'm able to. Vivi, what are your landmarks? All of that. Those lessons,
Can I
just with
say,
us going day to day.
and can I say, because when I parallel, I remember when I learned how to parallel park, he's like, use your mirrors. I was like, Dad, I can't see. He's like, just use your mirrors. That's how, he's very calm, very cool. He probably had
Yeah.
a newspaper while he was teaching me how to drive.
Yeah, that's him.
And then I'm like, fine, I'll use my mirrors. And like, it works. Use your mirrors.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he taught us a lot of things, but as women, and I know that there are women out there who didn't have maybe the day-to-day interactions with their dads. And maybe their interactions weren't the type that we had, where,
Mm-hmm.
he would come to us if he saw that we were, maybe getting off the rails somewhere, or maybe our behavior was doing a little something. He'd say, look, we need to have a heart-to-heart talk. And
Mm-hmm.
that meant we need to sit down and just have a conversation, not a lecture though. You
Right.
didn't feel like
It's a
it was a lecture,
conversation.
did you? Although you didn't get in as much trouble as I did, but you didn't
I
feel
mean,
like
I
it
got
was a
lectures
lecture.
because I was very feisty still.
Yeah,
We didn't do the same things growing up, but I was still very feisty,
yeah.
I
You
was
had
just
the
like
mouth, I had the action.
I had the mouth, and he would always say, "You always ask me why," because he would say something like, "Why?"
Mm.
So he would get mad at me sometimes,
Yes, yes.
because I would have my own little attitude about stuff. But I love him for obvious reasons. But when you and I share stories about growing up and how it's like he responded based on how he knew us. So
Yeah,
yeah, you have your experience, I have my experience, but it's like when you tell your stories, I listen to you, and then mine are slightly different. I'm
yeah,
like, dang, he knew us.
yeah,
Like he knew us, and that's how he responded. He responded based on what he knew about us, because he wasn't a very talkative and loud person, because you didn't know. He would always observe, so you didn't know what he
yeah.
was
Very
thinking or what
observant.
he observed.
But
Yeah.
I think, the bond that we had is something that translates into
I'm having a
relationships.
hard time sitting. Sorry.
Okay. And
I
that's
don't
what
usually sit
that's
like
what I
this.
meant to say. Like, the expectations for a relationship, I think for me, and I'm only going to speak for me,
Yes.
even though I don't feel like I had a lot of relationships. Let me say that. And I'm very transparent about that, even in the book. I don't think that
Mm-hmm.
I had as many relationships as people have. And part of that was because of, I think, I don't want to say we were overprotected, but we weren't let out to run free, and we were shown, like, this is acceptable behavior, this is not acceptable behavior. Not only was it told to us, but it was an example that he gave. I think the heart to heart talk is definitely an example of vulnerability in many ways. Our vulnerability to be able to say, okay, something must be going on with me if here this person that loves me, and I know he loves me and respects me, is telling me that let's sit down and talk. I need to be open to that conversation. So for me, when my husband, whom I have no doubt loves me, says, hey babe, this is going on, maybe we, then I'm all ears to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think, just being vulnerable and being secure in that vulnerability helps me in the relationships, in relationships, even when times are difficult. Like, I've been
Mm-hmm.
divorced. I mean, that was difficult, but still, there were conversations that had to be had, and we had them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think for women who didn't have that reinforcement as young women, there is something to learn even now with us sharing some of these stories. And I
Right.
really hope that it does help, women who think that they don't have. My concern is always with, I'm worthy, or the worthiness that people feel. And I think a lot of that comes from not having that voice that said, oh baby, you're fine, or like, this is going to work out, or don't
Mm-hmm.
worry about, because this boy didn't like you. And maybe I'm
Right.
naive about it. What do you think? What are your views?
Well, I just want to say I agree with what you said earlier on in this conversation, is that this is not bragging,
Oh
because the
yeah,
parents
yeah,
we all have to be thankful for what we get. The parents we get is the luck of the draw.
yeah,
Our parents were not perfect.
yeah, no.
Nobody's parents are perfect.
Mhm.
And with all the support and the shelter and the love that we had growing up, we still have to work hard every day for what we
Oh,
get out here.
absolutely.
We still have to have the wherewithal, like you always say, the emotional intelligence to strive forward, mature, learn from our mistakes, work hard, achieve, learn more so you get more, so you do more, so you can achieve more. We are still responsible for that. So I enjoy sharing this with you and the lessons of our Father because it's helped us, and why not share it with the world? And maybe somebody can relate, maybe they can't. But the vulnerability, I think a lot of times, too many times, you know, some families do grow up where they don't talk a lot, and it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of a taboo. It's not the ideal thing to do, to be vulnerable. You always protect yourself. But I feel like there's a confidence in your ability to articulate how you feel,
Oh
what's
yeah.
going on with you, and what problems you have. I think it's so important to work out conflict that way. We
Yeah.
had so many conversations growing up, whether it was at the dinner table, in the kitchen, at the flower shop, at his office, or on the
Yeah.
phone, or something we didn't like. We just talked about it, and I don't know, I don't think we took it for granted. I don't think I did, but what I didn't realize growing up, that that's not the case for a lot of homes. But there's
Right.
something really beautiful in just talking about it, working out the conflict before it festers. And I think that helps you be, if you do that in the home, it helps you be healthy as an adult. So if you didn't do it in the home, I would encourage people to do that, because everybody's voice is important.
Yeah.
Conflicts don't mean the relationship is over or
No.
damaged forever. Vulnerability doesn't mean that you're weak. Kindness doesn't mean that
Absolutely
you're
not.
weak. So
Absolutely
we
not.
we were always pretty resilient, whether we liked what daddy did or he liked what we did. We
Yeah.
always just bounced back and everything was fine minutes later. I think that's the lesson.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And, excuse me. And what is so certain is that everyone can learn these skills, and
Mm-hmm.
we learned it early. But
Mm-hmm.
even right now, there are resources available to show people how to start looking at vulnerability as an asset, and how to start communicating in a way that maybe they haven't experienced before. Because if you didn't grow up with your family communicating, maybe they argued, maybe they didn't talk at all,
Yeah.
and this type of action is strange or weird or uncomfortable, then you can get comfortable with it. It's practice. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
anything else. But I would just say that use the proper resources. Like this this broadcast is a resource where I am willing to share, the things that I've learned over time, and the things that, have been lessons that I know maybe not everyone has been able to have access to. With that being said, you mentioned kindness, and
Mm-hmm.
kindness is not weakness, because our
Mm-hmm.
Father was very kind,
Mm-hmm.
but he wasn't weak at all.
No, he
Even into
definitely,
his 70s, he was ready to throw down if necessary. He was very protective, but
he was.
people gravitated to him because of his kindness, and it didn't matter anyone's skin color. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
matter anyone's age, as
Mm-hmm.
long as the person wasn't what we call ignorant or
Mm-hmm.
behaving in a way that was less than, I don't know, appropriate.
Above board.
Yeah,
Above
he
board.
wanted everything above, even into death. We
Yeah.
knew, planning his services when he passed away,
Yeah.
we knew that it had to be classic,
It had to be
classy.
classy.
Yeah, yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
that's who he was. But his
That was
kindness
actually,
is something we
yeah.
can't forget, right?
No, we can't. And when we fulfilled his wishes, when he died, and the place that we buried him is so beautiful because we
Oh
know
yeah.
he loved nature and landscapes and just beauty and green. That was a source of healing for me because I knew that we had fulfilled something that would have been his standard.
Yeah, yeah, and see, Dad also taught us by example too, that we're here for a certain period of time, and we're to explore everything there is to do. I remember going to several services of maybe his brother or someone else that was dear to him that passed away, and I only saw him cry one time, and it
Mm-hmm.
was a tear, and then he was able to go and give a speech, and and really and really be back to himself. So we weren't taught to be sad and belabor over things that we can't change, but appreciate the time that we had. And that's what we've done for so many years. That beautiful place where we buried him, we would go and have picnics on his
Mm-hmm.
birthday. And because I moved away, you've been so gracious to go, and we do a lot, FaceTime from there. And that really is a source of healing for us, because I have no fear that he didn't want me to move on with my life, or doesn't want us to do whatever it is that,
Mm-hmm.
because just in death, he's still supporting us with the wisdom that he shared.
It's funny. I once asked a boyfriend who had known Daddy, we dated when Daddy was alive, and then, we kept in touch afterwards. And I said, I've told you many times how we go have a picnic at his gravesite every year. I was like, is that strange? He was like, not for you all.
Yeah, we were
Okay.
quote unquote the Cosbys of the hood for a minute, because and not in a bad way, because
Yeah.
you know unfortunately, when we grew up in Highland Park on our block, we were one of few families that had a mom and a dad in the household. Or like our dad went to work every day, and so some things were a little bit different. And they did call us the Cosbys, because we would say goodbye, I love you, and give a kiss when we were, doing things. And, he had respect in the neighborhood. But the thing
Mm-hmm.
that I love is that whatever we were doing, if we had one of our friends with us, they did it too. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if he said, well, we're going to go to Domino's Farms,
Mm-hmm.
if someone was over, go ask your mom, can you go? It wasn't like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you got to go home because we're going somewhere.
Right.
Or, you know, whatever it is, he embraced. I mean, we even have sort of a sister, right? And I don't know if she wants me to say her name, who I met at 5, and she
I don't
became
think
a
she would
sister.
mind. I don't think she would
My
mind,
sister
but
Angie, my sister
yeah.
Angie, we met at 5, and she was our sister. She lived only across the street, but if my mom went shopping, Angie got something too. If we went to Burger King, Angie got the Burger King. Angie spent the night, weekends. Angie was our sister. You know what I mean? So our family embraced everyone, even in our business. Our co-workers and employees are our family. And I
Yeah.
think that is a testament for both of our parents, but in
Yeah.
particularly uh our dad, because he let there be a tone where people were welcome.
Yes. Yep. He did. And
Uh-huh.
you didn't mention, I didn't realize this till years later, that remember how they used to send us to Louisiana for the
Yeah.
summer?
Yeah.
Angie stayed with him while we were gone.
Yeah, Angie
They
would
took
stay.
care of Angie as if she was, and we're sisters. We're
Your
sisters.
sister, even
And
to
she
this day.
was their child, and we
Mm-hmm.
were their children.
Uh-huh.
And even hearing how they paid, like I went to camp.
Yeah.
And a few years, years later, when I went to Uganda, I was going to some of my camp friends and counselors because I was trying to raise money to go to Uganda, and I found out that they had paid for some kids to go to camp. I didn't
Yeah.
even know that.
Yeah, I knew that. But
These people
when I
are
say he
caring.
set the tone for openness, because
Oh God,
he
yeah,
could put a kibosh on anything. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And he was resourceful. He was when I talk about in the book about an example of critical thinking, I think he should have been born maybe 20 years later,
Mm-hmm.
because all of the things and the ideas that he had, could really come to fruition for him with the technology and the access that we have now. So, what
Mm-hmm.
he taught us as well is that there is nothing that's impossible. If you
Right,
have an idea, there's so many things that I'm doing right now because I've had conversations with him. I
right.
got into journalism because, I had mentioned to him that I was interested. And this is after I had gone to had gone to Wayne State and had done a lot of my liberal arts class and was studying opera. Then I realized I don't know how to, I don't have an instrument. So I might be able to carry the tune, but I can't practice. This isn't for me. So I started getting interested in journalism. And after I had kind of stepped back from Wayne State, I told him about him. He went to Specs Howard and got the brochure. They said, here, Vivi, I've already talked to the guy. He's waiting on your phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And that may have been the action that changed my life. That got me to where I am right now.
Yeah.
Because he did that, I did take action. I did go at the time that I went. I did meet the people that I met, which I built relationships with. I did have the internship that I had, did have the opportunities at the
Mm-hmm.
radio station, all because of him taking that action on my behalf. So that let me know right there that there are no limits. And because of his support, I
Mm-hmm.
have that feeling right now. And it's just been something that's inbred in us. And I would love for people, women especially, to understand that uh, there are no limits, and anything that they were lacking because they didn't have that male figure,
Yeah.
we won't be able to capture everything, but some of the things that helped us, I'm willing to share, with him. And I'm planning on doing that in a more defined way.
I just think it's with him, it was basic logic. And I think the lesson in the basic logic, is to trust yourself. I do, all women have access to confidence. Let me be clear.
Mhm.
Um, Dads give girls confidence
Yeah.
because they approach things, most likely, usually approach things in a more logical sense. Not saying women aren't logical, I'm not saying that at all, because we could
Hmm.
talk hours about June Stokes, our mother,
Hmm.
but they approach things in a very plain, straightforward, simple way. It's just often the nature of a man to just straightforward, plain, and simple. And in that way, without going through any extra emotion or any other
Hmm.
ways of approaching a problem, it gives you confidence that you can go straight to the problem and solve the problem. So I think that's what helps with a dad. And I guess the lesson for me that I'd like to offer to anyone out there, anyone who feels that they're missing that, is that you can trust yourself. Your instincts are good. Your logic is good. I remember just one lesson with dad. It's like when I was trying to choose a college to go to, I really wanted to go to Spelman, and I still love Spelman to this day. But he sat and we sat. I had a math tutor at the time. We sat in the dining room and talked for 2.5, 3 hours. Me, Daddy, and the math tutor. And he said, "You got two of the best schools in the state of Michigan. University of Michigan and Michigan State University." I love. Did you ever hear my daddy impression? Because that's my daddy impression.
Look, we got to hurry up, Ev. I'm sorry. We
Okay.
talking so great. I just would go ahead, finish your story
Yeah,
though.
but no, he told me to go. So I'm glad I did, because he just basically gave it to me straightforward, and that's why I decided to. I went to Michigan, and I don't regret it.
Well, listen, dads offer wisdom from experience. They are your dads, but they've been men, they've been boys, they've had
Mm-hmm.
experiences that we'll never have. So if you have a dad in your life and maybe you think he's just not trying to keep you back, or,
Yep.
not give you good, remember that they have been men and they have been boys and they have something important. Thank you, Evelyn,
Of
for
course.
joining me on Brains and Bubbles Live.
Love
Listen,
it.
if you're interested, and I'm working on it anyway, but if you're interested in knowing more specifically about the things our daddy taught us, I'm coming up with something. I'll let you know when I'll be dropping it soon. But in the meantime, you can check me out here every Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern, for Brains and Baubles Live. Listen, don't miss it next time. See you. Bye-bye. Bye. Mwah.